It's loud in my headphones. Maybe it's the right mix for you, so I'll bring those headphones down a little bit. Welcome to day 2 of Escape the 8-Bar Loop. This is all about clip stacks, which means we're going to take every channel in the mix. Whatever the loop is, we're going to make it longer, change it from a loop that goes on and on and on and on forever, which is boring, into a phrase that has a start and an end. For example, when there's a drum loop, there might be a cymbal crash at the beginning. That's a start where you know there's something different because it's a cymbal crash, and then we're going to make it go like 8 bars, and then at the end it starts over and you hear the cymbal again. So you know, oh, boom, there's a cycle. It comes to the beginning, goes to the end, boom, there's a cycle again. When you do that with each loop in your mix, with each sound in your track, in your song, they all combine so that the whole song has little micro start and ending things that build tension and release, and tension and release. And when we do that throughout the whole song, the song itself builds up to a moment of tension at the climax, release into the peak or the drop, whatever you want to call it. And that's how we make music stay interesting instead of a super mechanical thing that goes on and on and on forever. Even the metronome in Ableton has tension and release built in because it changes 2 different pitches. Boop, 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 boop. So you know that the loop has a starting point and an ending point. So that's what it's all about. And let me get my monitor up so I can see your questions and comments. Thanks for everybody for being part of this and hanging out with me while we're home on quarantine. And please give me a yes if the music is okay, or tell me what needs to happen so I know what you're hearing, because I want to make sure you hear it and it sounds good. There's my little screen. Yesterday I messed up and did a live video with the monitor sound on. Yeah, yesterday I did a live recording with the monitor laptop, like volume up, so the volume up the camera. Doesn't matter, I'm not doing that today. So I can see you can see me. Who's here? Say hi, and we're gonna go into Ableton and get some full screen happening. So here we are in a session. And you might have heard this track a couple times already. Let's get some real estate happening and some opening up. So up at the top I have basically all the clips that I'm gonna use for this whole song, okay? And then down below are some scenes, a bunch of stuff, a bunch of experiments. This is what I was doing last night when I was playing around. I came up with a really super wicked cool sound. I want to just show this off. I was playing with some conga loops to add some fast rhythm motion and stuff, and it arrived at this sound. Which I totally love. And then I resampled it by tweaking around some parameters in the effects rack. It came from this, where I took like 5 layers of conga drums and resampled it through a gate to get this. I didn't see any comments yet. Let me know who's here. Say hi and tell me if you can hear everything. Put in a yes if you can hear me and hear the sounds. So what do we have to do when we're making loops? Well, what am I saying? To get here to the top of this session, I wanted to make sure I have every clip that I'm going to work with. So every channel should have at least 1 clip on it, and some of them have a bunch. So for example, in the build-up section, there's this one long file that I experimented with, chopped it into different pieces. So as I was fooling around yesterday, playing with different scenes, I came up with different variations. There's a gap here, a chorus over here, jump to this part. And I was editing cymbals. Here's the original loop. Then there was one with a gap where I muted some of the sounds. So my very first step was to start with this big disorganized session and make sure that I could catch every different idea. So like here was a chord part. And then I have this one called chord modification. So my first step, and then I did some resampling. So the first step, before I even build any clip stacks, was to get every different idea up to the top of the session. So the resampling bass, I caught all those ideas, the bass 2, the effects ending. So when I go down through here, all those ideas are represented up at the top. I made a mistake yesterday where I deleted all the workspace, and then I found out I had accidentally deleted a clip that I need, and you don't want to do that. So the first step was go through every track by track, take each clip, every clip variation, anything that's different, you copy, go up to the top, and paste it up there. That's going to be our starting workspace. So now I can delete all these other scenes, all these other ideas to chirp, because I saved it back up, got all those done. Now I'm in a fresh space. Clip stacks for variation. What I want to do is take every short loop and turn it into something longer. So for an example of a short loop, 1 bar bass loop. When I first recorded the idea, I was jamming and making a couple variations. So the 1 bar bass loop is what I'm going to use for the main groove. That's what I want to have, you know, if you think of the song, you're like, that's the bass line. But let's make an 8 bar phrase. Listen to what's different here. Okay, slightly different pattern in the notes. Did you hear that? At bar 4, we heard a dot, 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 dot. Now we're on bar 5. It's going to go through and have another turnaround at the end of this. So what's different here? On the 1 bar phrase, it's literally the same thing over and over and over again. And what I want to have is actually an 8 bar phrase. I know I'm telling you how to get into the 8 bar loop right now, but we're going to build these into sections and turn them into parts of the song after we get all these things done. So this has variation. You know that the phrase comes to an end and starts over again. Likewise with the chorus section. That's a 1 bar loop, but let's make it 8. So it's not just the same bass line over and over and over again. There are little variations that sound like, as music does, something's happening different in the phrasing to tell you that we're moving on and something else is happening. Now when you have an 8 bar phrase like this, and you put it together with a kick drum, it gives you a foundation so that every time you get to the end of this 8 bar phrase, you can add another drum part and get some more sounds. So how did I make these? Well, really, I was kind of cheating on this one. I recorded the long version first, just by jamming on push, playing some notes, and making a long phrase, and then, you know, I quantized a couple of them to make sure that these note lengths were all good. Then for the 1 bar loop, I cut it shorter. So what do we do about the same thing with the kick drum? This is the absolute easiest way to make a kick drum loop. I just looped an audio file. And here's a little hint about Command J in arrangement. So first technique of the day, we're going to make a kick drum phrase where I pasted the 1 bar, or the 1 beat. There's my metronome, right? Now look what happens, or listen to what happens at the end of the phrase. I'll give you a little lead into it from here. Done. So I just tripled up a bunch of kick drum bumps, put them together like this. How long is that? Aha! 8 bars. So now the technique, Command J, is consolidate. We're going to make one audio file that's an 8 bar loop so that every time it plays, we have this, what do you call that, like a stutter beat at the end, to signal that the loop is at an end and it's going to turn around. And remember, once you consolidate your sounds, you're not done yet. You have to turn on the loop switch and then take this and drag it back over to the kick drum track. You can actually click on it and drag it from arrangement to session view. And let's call this kick loop so that I know now I've got these at the end. It's a little 8 bar thing and it's going to work. And that's pretty cool so far, but what if we wanted to do another one? Why not have a little more variation? What's this one sound like? Okay, a more simple bump, and it happened at the 4 bar length and then at the 8 bar length. Gap, gap. So we've got like a B part where we can do another variation. Make sure I selected all the way out to the 8 bars. Hit consolidate, plug in my computer fan. I'm not seeing any comments yet. I'm not sure if something's wrong with somehow with my feed today, or what's going on, but let me know if you're watching this and say hi. If you have any questions, I can always answer your questions and check out your comments. Oh, Andy May's here. Seems good to me. Hey, Steve. Cool. Thank you. All right, good. I had to refresh my browser. I always want to make sure that I can see your questions and everything so that I'm not just like talking to myself for 20 hours. So this is going to be kick drum loop 2. I did the Command J consolidate command, which is Command J, to make one long audio file. And remember, you have to click the loop switch to turn it on. Now I can hold down the mouse button and hit tab to drag it over to the kick drum track. Now I have 2 kick drum loops just from using the Command J phrase. Let's hear how this sounds with the bass line and kick loop together. And while we're doing that, let's see what we did with the breakbeat command. Because that's just not the most exciting thing to listen to yet. Am I soloed? Yeah. So what I did was I had the kick drum bumps layer with the bass line notes, so we got that faster rhythm at the end of the phrase. So now what are we doing with the drum breaks? Here's our short loop. And I wanted something a little bit longer, so I did let's get to the end. I should probably solo this. What did I do at the end of this drum break loop? It's basically just a longer version of the loop. In the original sample, this 2-bar loop is like that, where there's a variation every time. But I didn't want to have that. I wanted to have 7 bars of this part, and then the ending only happened at the 8th bar. So I took the original loop, did copy, and then did paste over here. I'll just show you the operation again, okay? So here's our 2-bar loop. Command E to cut like that. And if I have an 8-bar space, I can take this one out to there and do copy to get it out. And for copy, I'm doing Command D. So a couple key commands. Duplicate is Command D, and then of course copy is Command C. I know I told you we're not going to work in the arrangement, but I'm not doing the arrangement to build the song structure. I'm doing it to just make some loops chopped up. So now you can see the 1-bar loop is happening over and over again right here. And it has a little bit of a turnaround at the end, which means we're not hearing the same 1-bar loop over and over and over again. We're hearing something a little bit longer that's a little bit more interesting. So let me take that one. Oh look, there is no loop on there. Click, hold, drag over, and title it 8 measures, 8-bar breaks. So we're going to go through all the channels, and I'm going to show you a couple of the techniques I use to make these loops into phrases to keep them interesting. Hi-hats. I did not do anything to make that one longer. So, and I want to show you a couple more of the techniques. So now when I was working on this conga loop, what we arrive at is this sound over here, which fits in really well with the rhythm to make the track feel fast even though it has a slow tempo. So let me show you how I got to that sound. It's kind of like a sound design thing, but it's going to play out in our song structure. So this one has a label called Preserve Transients. What does that mean? Well, you turn on the warp switch, set it to beats mode. You can have an option of how it's putting in warp markers, and I said by transients. Then this little thing controls what happens when it gets to the next transient. So I set it to play through and stop. And then you roll down this grid marker, and it affects it kind of like a noise gate, where it takes each transient. You know, transients are like where the waveform gets loud after it gets down to 0. So there's like, it's almost at 0, and that's a transient where it goes up loud again. That's the word we're using. And this little option, what's that called? Transient envelope. It sets the duration of volume on each sound. So instead of having a conga drum with that loud ringing atmospheric like reverb in the loop, I can get only the drum hits, which are real rhythmic, and it worked better with the beat instead of having it sound like, because I'm not making an acoustic recording of a hand drummer. You know, I wanna have something clicky and rhythmic that works with the rest of the sounds in the track. So that preserved transients is a cool little thing. And you could do it on a whole bunch of your sounds. And then I took these 5 loops that are similar, and I actually went through and warped every one of them and laid them out together so that we could see them all, and so I could compare how they're fitting together. And then I can make a stereo mix with it. So believe it or not, I really did take all these sounds and get them fitting together tightly. Here's a little note about conga hits. How did I actually do that? What did I do? Well, let's find some volume envelopes to play with. So I'm going to turn on the envelope switch and select clip. I know I'm flying through these different techniques, but you can watch this again on replay if you want to and remember them. When you want to take a little piece of a drum sound out, what I did was I clicked this little button here to open the envelopes view. I selected clip, so I'm changing just this clip, not the main mixer thing, and volume, and now I've got this little blue line up here, and I can choose a piece and cut it out. So like if I wanted to take that one hit out, and that allows you to clean up a loop and take out a part that you don't want and make it so that it's just not there, and you don't have to do any audio cutting, you don't have to like, you know, slice things out and then reconsolidate your new loop or anything like that. You can just use your volume automation to do it, and there are lots of other options in there, so you can transpose stuff and do a bunch of creative edits. The place I wanted to get to was having this, all these 5 loops sound like they're part of one thing, because as a technique of building length, keeping it interesting, I'm going to launch a bass line, a kick drum, the breakbeat with the hi-hats. And now I have the option of bringing these in one by one to build up energy in the track. So let me just show you what this might sound like if you were listening to it on a record. So over the course of 8 bars, I brought all those sounds in independently to arrive at a really thick, wide stereo field with all this bubbling kind of conga drum energy happening in here. And it's not just one sound with a stereo widener on it. It's not just a bunch of reverb on one conga loop. It's actually 5 different layers, and you can launch them at different times to add energy each time, make it thicker, and make it feel like the track is growing and growing and growing and leading up towards a massive peak. So that's another technique for building length in your track, and we're gonna actually do that and make a section that's the conga drum thing. And for fun, I resampled it so I can get to this place. Let me know if you want to see the effects chain that I used for these congas, because I could run through what I did with EQing and especially erosion and gate. But I want to know if that's interesting to you, and while I'm waiting for the answer on that, let's look at the same thing with other drum breaks. Why did I have a track with 5 other audio files coming in? Well, this break loop, it gets a little bit predictable, and you know, it's cool, but later in the track, I'm gonna wanna add some high frequency stuff, some more hi-hats, and make it feel like the beats are stacking up. So I grabbed some other drum loops to do that. Notice I'm panning them left to right. And every time I add one, it gets a little bit more interesting. So when we do this over time, it feels like, again, the track is growing and leading somewhere and getting more interesting. And like I did with the congas, I went through all these loops and I really did actually warp them all and cut a couple envelopes so that they all fit together as one layer. This one says LFO filter. What does that mean? Let's find out. See, now I'm in that problem of trying to, remember yesterday I said about using bus groups so you don't have to solo and mute everything all the time? I'm running into that problem right now, but that's okay because we're doing a lesson on individual layers. So the goal here of this lesson is to get variation in all your sounds. To do this one, I used an LFO on a sawtooth waveform with a slow rate of just 1 bar. So every bar, that filter moves. Da, 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 da. So that's a good example of using sound design to cross over into composition, where instead of having the same 1 bar loop with the filter staying in the same position, now you have a little LFO robot tweaking that filter for you, keeping that loop a little bit more interesting. And I know that's subtle. That's a small detail. Maybe not. Maybe nobody's even going to notice it. But when all these little tiny decisions and details combine in your whole song, that's how your music gets a unique sound that nobody else has. So you really got to go in and find and play with it, have fun with it. And every time you find a place to make something a little bit interesting, say yes to that and keep it in your track, because those 1,000 little decisions that you make are going to be what makes your track stand out. I think we have a good example of clip envelopes in this one, so let's see what that's doing. See the little blue dot right there on the volume setting for the clip? It's dropping in and out. Let's find out how. How do we find that? We click the envelopes view. We look for what's automated, so there's a little blue dot next to the word clip and volume. That sounds pretty clean. What's it sound like if I undo this envelope automation? I'm just going to draw it out. So there's a little hop in there, like a little double beat. By itself, it sounds cool. But with all the beats, that might get in the way. Yeah, that little extra beat totally sticks out. And to check it, I play all the beats together. Something feels a little too heavy on the right side. Maybe I'll bring that in. And to round out the group, this is a fun one. I made a little drum rack so that later in the track, when I'm approaching a breakdown, I can grab this phaser thing and go crazy with phaser and drum gate effects. So let me show you what I did again. There's an EQ. Let's kind of minimize that so you can see this effects rack. So we have gate on off to make it rhythmic. We have phaser dry wet. And I just mapped the two XY controls for feedback and frequency. Let me know what you think of that phaser sound. Just type in phaser if you like it. And then on the drum bus, I did the basics for drive, crunch, damping frequency, and a fun one, transients. So my basic plan for this one is I'm going to have a starting position nice and normal, just playing the drum loop, and a I'm going to tweak these knobs when I'm heading into an interesting part and I want to have something happen. So it might sound something like this. And drop the kick drum in after you tweak the knobs and make it do something interesting. Let me know if you like this kit, this effects rack. I can make this into a little preset download for you that you can play with on your own if you want to drop this on a drum kit. You're going to need drum bus, so that means you need Live 10 because that's only available in Live 10. And you'll be able to drop this on any audio loop and tweak out the drums, play with the phaser, and do some gate slicing. So why would I do that in a track? Well, you know, the drum loop can get boring after a little while, so for approaching a critical moment in the song, I'm going to tweak these knobs, make sure that channel is up nice and loud, to really draw the ear into it, have that sound change from drums into this outer space phaser sound, and then at the end of 8 bars, bam, turn off the effect and go back to the main beat, and it's going to sound cool. So that's, you know, the strategy I'm doing is trying to make things that are interesting and change over time, so that as we go through building our song sections, each one of these is going to do something kind of cool. I played around with this one. We started with a sound like this. It's just a little clicky kind of thing. So I made 2 channels, panned them left and right, play them together, change the starting point, and make a couple variations. Let's get some beats on that. And I like this reverse one because it feels like it's drawing you into the kick drum hit. And it's got stereo width and it's doing something fun. And then I thought, what can I do to make it even more exciting and exaggerate something about this to make it even more like cool? So I went to a double time feel. And I don't know if I'm going to keep that or if I'm even going to use that, but I wanted to show you how I do it. So to get here, I started with the basic sound that was from resampling. It's just little clicks. Then I went and reversed them in this one. In this one, I offset the starting point just by a couple beats so that they're going left and right. And using the, what is that mark called? Double original tempo. Well, that's easy. Double time. You can double or half the original tempo to make it speed up. Let me select the one I'm listening to. And that's a fun switch. You can just totally easily double or half time your sounds. But like I was saying, I might not use this double time thing. We'll see how it feels. If I get to a moment in the track where I feel like I want to do some crazy fast cricket sound and insect sort of stuff, I'll put that in there. Otherwise not. Let's move on to cymbals. What do we do to keep cymbals interesting? Well, first we start with way too much, which means a cymbal crash on every quarter note. Bam, 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 bam. That's going to be the peak section, most dramatic moment of the track. I'm going to use that at peak, so I called it peak. I just muted some. Really, it could not be easier. I like to record stuff, fool around and jam, and get excited, and then cut back later. So this one that's called cymbal gap, you're going to hear 2 bars go by, and then the cymbals come in, and then 2 bars without it. So it's like 4 bars of cymbals and 4 bars without cymbals, but the 4 is in the middle. And to do this, in case you don't know, you can just take notes, select them, hit the 0 key, and turn them off. So I just took everything at the beginning, select, and 0, to activate or deactivate the MIDI notes. It takes 1 second, 0 brain power, and it's a great way to get some variation in your sounds. And then for something that's kind of like what a human drummer would do in a song, I wanted to have just 1 cymbal crash on bar 1 and bar 5, so that as this loop, or as this MIDI clip plays, you get a marker for the turnaround. Turnaround is where the loop changes, or where the phrase goes back to the beginning. And you've heard this a million times. When something's happening, you get a cymbal crash. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I got tricky. Did I use the same cymbal crash twice in a row? No, I did not. How did I do that? I'm not sure if you're all, who is watching, if you're total beginners or if this is really old and boring for you. But when I wanted to hear these notes and get some variation in them, I turn on the monitor switch with this little headphone thing. And originally this sound was up there, right? On the original track where I recorded it, on the downbeat of bar 5, that MIDI note is up there. So in my variation clip, I select it, and now I'm going to use the down arrow key to move it around and decide which one I want to hear. I think that one. So on the start of the loop, we get this sound, and then after 4 bars, we get that sound. And together, they go with the beat and the kick drum to give you a signal that the loop started over, we're at another part of the phrase, and every time that cymbal crash happens, structurally, it's cool to introduce a new sound. So the cymbal is not just announcing the beginning of the loop, it's telling you as the performer or producer, like, wake up, something should happen now. Let's bring in this thing. And did you also hear that kick drum just doubled up at the end of 8 bars, which is like, oh, wake up, something has to happen. So if you're doing a show and you're playing live, having these little 8-bar phrases is really fun because it tells you what to do. Like when you hear one of those little signals, you're like, oh man, something has to change. So let's bring in some of these drum beats on the next cymbal crash. Well shit, we'll bring them all in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this mix is not done, it's not perfect and all that, but I'm starting to have a good time. I just, I wanted to stop talking and keep firing off clips. We're getting into a little bit of a problem now where I have all these different scenes, right? Like I can't just press one launch button and get that same sound back because the kick drum is down here on scene 3, breaks are up on scene 1, this conga's on scene 4, and they're all scattered up and down. So I want you to remember about the special command called capture and insert. That's going to be a huge part of how we make our songs. It's up here in the create menu, shift command I, and the important thing about it is that it will insert a new scene below whichever one you have selected. So I'm going to put, and the reason I'm doing this is I want to keep this combination of sounds right now. I like this loop, I like how it sounds, and I want to keep all these. So I'm going to select a scene here, capture and insert, choop. Now it makes a new scene with all those same sounds there together. So I can press one launch button and get all those sounds back again. So learn the capture and insert command because it's super helpful and it allows you to jam, and then when you get an idea for a new sound that should come in, you can just, well, I'll do it. You just go like this. And I'm going to add the bass line sound after 8 bars. Where is it? Oh, it's up at the top. What's it called? Oh, I labeled it. I'm going to grab the Pt.2. Did you notice that came in on a cymbal crash? So now we're back. We have kind of a problem of most of the loop happening down in this scene, and there's this other clip up here. What if I accidentally press stop all clips? And then I'm like, where? Oh, what was that sound I was just doing? Where was that bass line? Where'd it go? I lost it. I can't find my arrangement. I can't find my group of clips. Well, the solution is to do capture and insert so you get them all on the same scene and you can get them back. So we're here. I select this scene and do capture and insert again so that I have these two ready to go. And I can play through them in a progression. Let's go a step back. Cymbal crash, sound drops out. Fast forward, I want to bring in a new sound. There comes the bass. The reason I'm telling you this like that is because as we go downwards in the master channel, our song is going to progress below us. All right, let's have a little camera moment. Camera moments with Steve. Hey, Jay Sager's here. Is it Sager or Sager? I'm not sure how to say your name. And Rolf and Chescarel. Yo, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for hanging out and watching stuff with me on Tuesday. Do you feel like you're starting to lose track of days because we're home in quarantine? I do. I feel like every day is Saturday now, which is the day I want to have every day be. And oh my gosh, 34 minutes. I hope this wasn't too boring today. I was trying to show you editing techniques for audio loops and MIDI loops that you can do right now so that to start off with, you just play. You're in live. I want a kick drum, I want a bass line, I want some audio drum loops. You go to your sample library, throw them all in different tracks, get them going, and you'll have music that's, 2 bars of looping or 1 bar, and it's like short little loops going over and over and over again. And that's cool when you're a producer and you're sitting there listening to the same stuff all night long and your girlfriend's like, dude, shut up, right? But when you want to make this into a song, you need to take those short loops and make them longer so they have turnarounds and they become phrases where you can feel that something happens at the end, boom, and starts over again. And when that boom comes, it's a cymbal crash or it's a new sound comes in. So what we're trying to get to is a whole list of ingredients. I call them clip stacks because, let me go back in here. And end of Steve on camera. I call them clip stacks because on every channel in the mix, there's a nice little stack of clips that are labeled and ready to use. Cymbals, that's going to be the peak. This is going to be the basic one we use. Snap echo, whatever that means. We have double time, we have reversed, we have basic. So as I'm building my song sections, I can be like, well, maybe at the intro, the beginning of the song, I'll start with the basic one. And then when I get to the craziest peak climax of the whole thing, when everything's freaking out right before the drop, I'm going to hit this. D, 4. And then go to the reverse or whatever. So for me, these clip stacks, I'm thinking of song sections already, where these are intro, that's for the drop, main peak, and that's for afterwards. We looked at using clip envelopes and plugins to make variation over time, and a little bit of key commands in the arrangement with the consolidate command. And another way to get variation in your track is with layering, so that instead of having one loop that changes over 8 bars, we can stack these up. So we have bar 1 here, and we go through it something like that. Not that fast, of course. You might want to play those each for 2 bars or 4 bars. But the idea is that over time, people are going to hear a new little hi-hat coming in. And you probably know this from being out dancing. When you could be listening to like a cool, simple, minimal track, and just one new hi-hat coming in can totally take the energy up. And then it changes every 8 bars. So the reason I wanted 5 loops is that here's 5 different chances where I could have the mix change a little bit after one of those signals, like a cymbal crash, I drop another one. Wait 4 bars, cymbal crash, drop another one. Wait 4 bars, cymbal crash, drop another one, or drop all of them. And that gives me a chance to continually add layers so the song is evolving, flowing, changing. I'm doing it live. I would do this with push and not with my mouse. But it lets you play live, improvise, jam, launch clips, keep the music interesting. And when you get bored as a performer, you can go and drop another clip. You can stop another clip. You can mute the channel. You could launch all of them at once. You have options for how to keep yourself entertained while you're performing or producing, and that means your music is going to be interesting to the people listening because they're hearing a person who's having fun instead of hearing somebody who's in the timeline calculating, okay, I've done this 14 times, now I'll have 2 more at the end. Oh, excellent. That's kind of like, I don't know, that doesn't work for me. I want to do it in the flow by feel. We looked at some resampling where I took all these conga loops, thinking the same thing. Yeah, I can drop 5 different conga loops. Maybe at the end of the song, I'm going to have a conga section with just bass line and congas, and it's like, where did that come from? And I have the opportunity to drop all 5 of them or in different orders. And then since I was fooling around having fun, I resampled this. We didn't hear later on in this, but what I was doing was tweaking this erosion plugin to get that sound that's going like doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. So a basic technique for making something more interesting is record a resampling section and tweak the crap out of your knobs on the input to it so that over 64 bars that sound keeps on staying interesting. I want to kick them there so you can feel where it is in the beat. Listen how that's changing. So here's the beginning, and as we get to the end of 64 bars, it's getting more and more techie and tweaked out. So I can put this 64 bar loop on. I'm going to even label it 64 measures resampler. This is a no-brainer. I can turn this on and I have 64 bars of interesting sound happening from this one little conga thing. And I don't have to think about it. I don't have to tweak it. I don't have to chop anything. I don't have to mute anything. I can just roll that loop and be like, yep, 64 bars. Now I have time and space underneath to fire off my clips, change some other stuff in the drums, and keep the track interesting. So the whole strategy we're going for is to end up with a whole bunch of scenes, and every scene is going to be like using one of these tricks I just said. So we're going to do maybe like a whole bunch of scenes adding these drum loops in, a whole bunch of scenes with the conga loops, and the whole time we're doing that, we've got our bass line on an 8-bar loop, our kick drum on an 8-bar loop with those little turnaround things where the bass goes like this and the kick drum goes boom, 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 and starts over. Dan Pratt on the scene, what's going on? So clip stacks are the ingredients for the song sections that we're going to build tomorrow. Tomorrow, basically, we're just going to fire off clips, use the key command capture and insert, and stack up scenes. So we're going to start with an intro sound and make, the intro scene. I didn't even talk about the rest of the MIDI clips. I should probably mention those. I made clip stacks over here. The original one was like this, and then I made variations, I think. You've heard this before. You can see this is a 16-bar loop where I was just playing and doing a lot of velocity stuff on the keyboard. So that's what makes this one interesting over time. You can even see with that block of notes going out to here, the velocity starts low and ramps up to a crescendo, vocabulary word, and then drops back down, starts low and builds up again like a wave. It's like wave motion. I love how music does that. Even in the beginning, build up to a wave and then back down, build up to a wave and then back down. I did fast ones here, right? So it's like over 2 bars, there's a little build up and back down. 2 bars and back, build up, back down. And then 1 bar, boom, 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 boom. And then later I was like, all right, let's not go crazy. Let's do a 4-bar slow build up and back down. And that velocity pressure is connected to the filter sound. So you can hear it changing, and as we get to the end of the loop, it builds up. Can we actually hear that? Yeah, so the filter gets kind of brighter towards the end of the loop, and then when it starts over, it's more muffled. So that, I don't know if that's beyond your skill level, but I wanted to, I like to point out all the tricks I can think of to show you how to make variation in your songs, so that we don't just have one repetitive chord loop. We actually have something interesting happening. And then for this one, I labeled it chord mod, so that earlier we have that minor 7th sound, and later it goes up to this note changes to this note, which is kind of like resolution of the minor 7th chord. And knowing me, I'm going to actually want one that starts there and only goes in that upper register. So I'll call it upper. So there you go. That's as simple as I can make it to change your music patterns, get parts to play with that are going to keep your music interesting. So chord mod is 16 bars. I use M for measures. So I can launch this one, and I'm going to have 8 bars of the minor 7th chord, and then 8 bars of the resolved octave. Or if I want to have just an 8-bar loop that's already up there, I can launch that one. So I better call that 8 measures, stay organized. We've got our inner voices, chords, melody, lead, and our resampling bass sound that I totally love. What did I do with this one? The original is 16 bars with a cool ending. So I made a special effort to clip off the ending and keep it available so that it plays through. So possibly the last sound in the whole track could be this bass sound. That's recorded in the track, that effect sweep. That might be the ending of the song, where I just play one clip that has that little thing. If I wanted to just have only that sound, select the clip, Command D for duplicate, and I'm going to do capital E ending, drag the start marker over to here, and now when I get to the end of the beat, I can fire that off. And it's ready to go. Just for final review, because I got my teacher brain on, we have our bus groups, where everything in the mix is coming through those 3 groups. All those drums, cymbals, congas, crash, everything. all coming through there. And the power of bus grouping like this is when I want to make a mix of all the percussion elements, I can just unmute this one sound or this one channel and listen and ask myself, do I hear every sound in the drums? Like, I put all that time into sound design, I did all that work to make those loops. I want to make damn sure I can hear it, so I can just do the drum mix only. Same for the instruments. Do I hear the bass? Do I hear the lead? Do I hear the chords? Do I hear the inner voice sound? Is it all there? Is it in a nice mix? Can I get to it in one place? So when I want to edit these, I don't have to go through here and mute every single cymbal crash and every single other thing by one by one by one. No, if I want to work on the synth group, I mute the drums and I tell the low end to be quiet, and I got it all right there. You do that by just setting the outputs of each sound to go to your bus groups. Set your audio from to be no input, and make sure you activate your monitor switch so you can hear it. And then you can easily work on groups of sounds to make great submixes when you want to. And by the way, in terms of gain staging and stuff, making a really good stereo submix with a bus group is excellent practice for making your main mix in your track, okay? Because if you can't make a main mix, if you can't make your subgroup sound good, you're not going to be able to make your stereo main master mix sound good. So working with subgroups is great training. It lets you practice doing stereo panning, EQing, frequency balancing a group of sounds together, and really isolating, like, what do I hear, what's missing, how do I get it to all sound good? And once you do that with your drums as a stereo group, and your instruments alone as a stereo group, and your kick and sub bass in the mono group, once you get those three subgroups working well individually, then you can blend them together, and it's so much easier to make your track feel right. For example, if you got this feel like your drums aren't really cracking, you don't have to go and select 8 channels of drums and try to move them all up without messing up the relative position. You got one fader. You can take your entire drum mix and go boop, put it up like 3 dB or whatever, and feel your track snap into life. Or if your bass is too muddy and huge, you could just be like, oh, I'll take my mono fader, bring it down a little bit, and then turn up the monitor volume in the room so that the room is louder and the bass in the low end is louder, but you changed your mix in a simple way without having to like select multiple faders, drag them up and down. Theories of mixing, I'm touching on a couple different topics. So what are we gonna do today? Tomorrow. We're gonna take the clip stacks, we're gonna use the capture and insert command, and we're just gonna build the song section. So tomorrow is really how to escape the 8-bar loop. I had to make sure we had an 8-bar loop first, and along the way to get there, I talked about bus group mixing, audio edits, MIDI edits, using the pencil tool for the envelopes, using the consolidate command, Command J, in the timeline to take little slices of loops and put them together. We looked at duplicating sounds in a group, like an Ableton group, where there's like 5 conga drum loops inside one stereo group, and we can fire those off in different orders to get variations and repetitions. I especially like the part about editing the end of the kick drum loop so that every 8 bars it goes boop, 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 boom. That's such a clear signal to the dance floor that something's going to happen, to you that something has to happen, so that when we have those signals in the 8-bar loops, we can just go and jam in session view. You don't have to think, you don't have to plan, you don't have to write it down, you don't have to visually have anything in the timeline. You can just play and feel and be like, yeah, I'm a little bored. Next time it comes around, I'm going to do something. Boom, 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 psh. And you launch a new clip, you launch a new sound, and your track gets more interesting. After that's been going on for 4 minutes, you just do it the opposite. You're like, well, I'm in this groove, it's getting kind of boring. I think it's time to start muting sounds and peeling them, thinning it down. So then you arrive at the ending of your track by, instead of adding new clips every time, when that 8-bar cymbal comes around, do, 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 psh, and then something's gone. And you mute the bass line, or you mute the chords, or you mute the conga drums. And your track, the coolest thing about it is that you can mute, your track continues to get more interesting even when you're taking stuff away. So making a good track is not about just adding everything forever. Like the first part, you add stuff and build it up to a climax. The main peak is when you basically have all your loops playing at once. That's my definition of the climax. And then after you get there, it's really simple. You just keep working with the loops and the phrases, taking beats away, taking sounds away, and you end up at nothing, which is the end. So that's my strategy for making a whole song in session view where we can play scenes going downwards. Boop, 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 boop. So at the end of this, by tomorrow, I'm going to be able to go through my master channel, launch the scene launch buttons going down, that's the triangles in the master channel, and play a song from start to finish, going from the top to the bottom. That's my goal. It might not be perfect, but it's going to be good enough that you know how to do it. I didn't see a whole lot of questions today. Whoa. Which means I guess you're just paying attention. So if you have any questions, type them in, and I'll be glad to check them out. Remember, I'm answering questions on the Facebook group right now. I do check the YouTube one. We've had some new subscribers, and honestly, Oh my gosh, this thing about making all the things, unlocking all the lessons, it's been like an ocean wave of people signing up for Mixotexture courses, starting lessons. The group is growing. More people we've never seen before are posting tracks for track feedback. And it's making me so happy. I totally love it. Let me go into my final screen share moment and show you where you can get this stuff if you didn't download anything yet. So here is the Mixotexture member site. You're going to see a link pop up for how to get to here. It just says courses mixotexture.products. And Mixotexture is like architecture, but your mix, right? So, okay. Escape the 8-bar loop is right here. Click, could not be easier. And there's info about it, blah, 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 blah. And you just scroll down, pay what you want. It's on the sidebar. The options come up. This used to be a $250 course. I mean, I put a lot of energy and time into making this when I first started it because nobody's really teaching how to make tracks in Session View. And I wanted to show you this technique of how to make songs where you can jam in Session View, use Ableton at its best, and come out with music at the end that's fun so you can perform, tweak effects and jam and be like, you know, using Session View. Most people are teaching in Arrangement View. Anyway, there's the options. Pay what you want. You see how to do that. That's pretty self-explanatory. And if you're more along the vibe of doing small little monthly payments, I set up a Patreon. It says a little donation makes a big difference. You click on this link right at the top of the screen from the member site. It'll take you over to Patreon. You can sign up for like $3 a month, or when you click join, you can edit and add in, you know, 5 a month or 10 a month. Whatever you feel like. If you want to support the Mixotexture group and just show your appreciation for everything we're doing with track feedback, live video streams, the email list every week where we send out free plugins or mix sets and just, you know, the whole thing. Sign up on Patreon, make a little donation. It really does make a big difference to help support me in this studio. Thank you for the studio. I went a long time without having a workspace that I was really able to make sound without having people call the cops. So I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for all your support. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for sharing tracks. And if you download any of these lessons, you better expect to share a track and show us what you're doing with your music, because this is not a spectator sport. I want you to get involved. Kavita Aurora just joined up. Unfortunately, you joined at the end. This will turn into replay in a couple seconds. So that's all for today. And tomorrow we're going to capture and insert some scenes and build out our song sections. Thanks for watching, everybody. Catch you later.